Welcome to the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. I'm Catherine Gordon, the author of Sugar Freedom. This video answers the question, carnivore was working, so why would I switch back? There were a couple of reasons. Carnivore was working. I was first introduced to carnivore back in March of 2018, and that was March Meatness with Dr. Sean Baker on his Facebook page, and I tried it and found it fairly effective. And then exactly a year ago, getting ready to go and sing at Carnegie Hall, I was looking for an anti-inflammatory and lean out protocol so that I could look and feel and sing my best at this big choral presentation. Back in September, I went back and started doing carnivore again, and it was working really, really well, and I made a number of videos about it. Thank you to everybody who watched them and commented and subscribed. But then, a couple of weeks ago, I made the decision to see if I could add back some above ground vegetables and some low sugar fruits. Why would I want to do that? The first reason why is I wanted to find out if I had developed metabolic flexibility. There is a theory that as we become less inflamed, as we become leaner, that we regain the ability to be metabolically flexible, to switch back and forth from burning carbohydrates to burning free fatty acids. And I thought, let me see if I have reacquired that metabolic flexibility. And I learned about that from 3 different doctors. One of them was Dr. Atkins, and if you remember Atkins induction, only 20 grams of carbohydrate per day, a ketogenic diet, and then during ongoing weight loss on Atkins, you add back some carbohydrates. Then also Dr. Donaldson, who wrote Strong Medicine, which was written back in the 60s, which was a very strict fatty meat and water and a little bit of plain coffee diet that was followed until you had reached goal weight. And then once you had reached your goal weight, that you would start to add back about 4 different foods. And if you started to regain weight, then you would go and lose another 5 pounds. And of course, this was back in the 60s, and I read the book a couple of times, and I never quite understood what exactly it was that Dr. Donaldson was going after at losing 5 more pounds. Obviously because it worked, and it worked for his patients. But I think the reason why it might have worked is that as you get lean and you get to that healthy weight, you start to lose that visceral fat, the subcutaneous fat, especially in me, on my butt and on my thighs, that comes off first, and the fat right around the waistline, right here in the trunk, seems to come off last. And the theory is, well, actually it's been proven now that that visceral fat is the most metabolically active. And that may be what's causing the hormonal conditions that increase appetite and cause fat storage. Because we know, right, the 2 most important hormones for fat storage are insulin and leptin. And I talked in another video about the fact that what was shocking is that we used to think that raising leptin is what would make us leaner, but the reality is that as leptin drops, that creates the atmosphere in which the ketogenic effect can come in, creating beta-hydroxybutyrate and causing that appetite lowering effect. There is so much, one of the greatest difficulties with big time weight loss is all of the contradictions that seem to come into play as we begin to attempt to get leaner. All right, so the 3 doctors, and then the last doctor, Dr. Altshuler, who wrote the Alt Sliding Scale Diet, who is coming at an approach of trying to manage things like anxiety and inflammation. He had gum disease. Once again, doing the same thing though, pulling out the carbohydrates, basically eating meat and animal foods, meat and dairy and eggs. And once, about 30 days, and then with Dr. Altshuler after 30 days, you test back, you add some carbs back. If it doesn't work, you go another 30 days and then see if you can add some back. So all 3 of these doctors, Atkins, Donaldson, and Altshuler, talking about adding them back. So I thought, well, maybe I can too. The 3rd reason I wanted to add carbohydrates back was social disapproval of the carnivore diet. There's a lot more approval for a low carb, even ketogenic diet, which includes vegetables and some low sugar fruits. I mean, that's really easy to support. My diet, Sugar Freedom, that's what it was. We're gonna pull out the sugar, the grains, and the processed vegetable oils and the seed oils, and we're going to stick with the natural proteins, the healthy fats, and the vegetables that grow above the ground, and low sugar fruits if they're well tolerated. So what I really wanted was I wanted to be right about sugar freedom. I wrote it 5 years ago. It was how I overcame obesity, and I wanted to be able to say, hey, I went back to sugar freedom and it worked. Pretty obvious. If you've written a book, you want it to continue to be correct. And I think for many people that have read it and who have reported back to me, it works for them. They don't have to go all the way to carnivore. I believe if I look at my history, and Dr. Saladino, who went on the doctors recently, I'm going to get to that in a minute, we had a similar symptom in our youth, in my childhood, eczema, which seems to be an inflammatory, insulin-resistant autoimmune condition. So it may be that back when I was just like 3 years old, I was already primed for the inability to handle some plants and handle sugar and handle a lot of carbohydrates. But that brings me to Dr. Saladino and brings me to this issue of social disapproval and medical disapproval of carnivore. Recently, Dr. Saladino went on The Doctors on CBS. He did not have an opportunity. It was amazing. I watched the episode. They would fire questions at him and then not give him an opportunity to respond. And then I went and I watched a video that he did talking about the experience. And they had asked him, do you have any studies showing the effects of broccoli on lupus? And he's like, yes, I do. And then they wouldn't let him answer. Well, it turned out that he had sent them 36 different studies that they could read showing the evidence for what was working and why he was recommending this carnivore plant-free protocol. And they did not admit that they had received them, and they didn't mention that they had read them. Do you have any studies? Yes, I just sent you 36, but he didn't get to say that on the episode. And I think that's important to me because what we're seeing is, look, I have to be honest, I like approval. I like to get along with people. I like applause. I don't like confrontation. And the carnivore approach very often can invite confrontation, especially when we look at the drumbeat of the media and agriculture, especially corporate agriculture, talking about, we've got to reduce meat consumption to save the planet. What I believe, and what my reading and research has shown, is that the problem goes back to oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, the oils that are grown by agriculture. I believe that there is a very strong movement to get people to use more of these products of agriculture, including the seed oils, and that the carnivore approach, the animal approach, interferes with that. On top of that, one of the best fertilizers in the world is manure. But when we get back to oil, when we get back to fossil fuels, so many of our chemical fertilizers where do they come from? They come from petrochemical products. So there's a part of me that wonders how much of the drumbeat against eating animals for the planet actually may be motivated by a desire to continue to keep the demand for petrochemical fertilizers and plant and seed oils to keep that market high. I'm going to be doing more research on that. So that was reason number 3, wanting to go back into a more ketogenic, above ground vegetable approach, was for social approval, because I didn't want to be disapproved of. So there it is. When I wrote Sugar Freedom, I actually lost weight eating some fruit and a lot of vegetables and salads. But then what happened is that after menopause, that changed. So the consequences that I experienced when I went back on the plants and vegetables in order of their importance: number 1, digestive problems. So cramping, issues with digestion. I won't go any farther than that. You can use your imagination. So that came up probably the middle of day 2. Constant hunger. Oh my gosh, that was terrible. Constant hunger after breakfast. I would get up, I would be fine. I tested my blood ketones. I was still in nutritional ketosis. Day 1, I was at 0.3, day 2, 0.6, 0.5. I was staying in ketosis, but I was still ravenously hungry after breakfast. So whatever it was, and yes, I was eating fruit, and something about that fruit, and I think I already knew this was going to happen, but it was a pear or an apple or a grapefruit or strawberries or melon. Oh boy, as soon as I would be done with breakfast, I would still be hungry. I would still be looking for more food, and that never happened on carnivore. And then probably the worst one was feeling bad about myself. And not just like, oh, I'm bloated, or oh, my digestion is off, or oh, I'm hungry, I feel bad about myself. No, I mean, really feeling bad about myself. The negative thoughts in my head, that mean girl inside of my head, you know, telling me how bad I am. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? Almost to the point where the rational Catherine was standing back and going, who is this incredibly mean person inside my head telling me how awful I am? It was terrible. And then also a lack of motivation, not wanting to do the things that I love, and third of all, fear of failure. I'm a singer, I'm an actor, I'm writing a historical piece about the Irish soprano Catherine Hayes right now, and I love what I do, love to sing, love to act and dance, and yet this terrible fear and procrastination coming on about this project. I might just think that, you know, that was normal concerns, normal stage fright. No, because I had a comparison to make. I was able to compare how I felt getting ready to sing at Carnegie Hall to the way I feel now. And let me tell you, that's pretty scary. Even though I was in a large choir, it's still a huge responsibility. You come in wrong, you sing a wrong note. Not that I would, I was very well rehearsed, but imagine whether you're singing is your instrument or whether you're playing an instrument, you really want to be perfect as much as you can, and you're under a great deal of pressure. But back then, you know, I was doing carnivore and was really handling that pressure well. But as soon as I added back the vegetables and fruits, started to have these negative feelings, negative self-talk, and the fear coming back. I'm back on carnivore. I'm feeling much better. It's been probably at least 7 days now, and a lot of the mental pain has cleared. The beating myself up has cleared. But the best part is, as of this morning, the hunger is gone. I am back to this wonderful feeling of I can eat my carnivore meals and feel completely satisfied and ready to get on with my life in between meals. So I live between meals. I think we all can live our lives between meals, and the wonderful thing about this animal food-based approach, this kind of plant freedom, I'll call it, because remember, it all breaks down to glucose, right? So it all breaks down to sugar. So it is still sugar freedom, but it's plant freedom. The most amazing thing that it gives me is just this sense of being able to get on with my life in between meals. And then, of course, when I'm doing carnivore, I quite naturally, I want to eat a substantial breakfast, a substantial lunch, and then go on and really not interested in having dinner, which is great for a stage performer because nobody really wants to get out there and sing and dance on a really full stomach. Now, the last thing I want to cover, which I'm going to be going more into on my next video, is POMC, which stands for pro-opiomelanocortin neurons. Why is that important? The biggest thing I've noticed on my journey to overcome obesity is when I can manage hunger, I can manage body fat and weight. And when everything goes wrong is when my hunger goes out of control. I talked before about insulin and leptin, but it turns out, and a lot of this came from looking at carnivore and also looking at cardio freedom, the way I exercise, and trying to figure out why is it that I'm not hungry? Because you would think, if you look at the volume of food that I was eating when I was eating plants, just these huge plates full of food, like big salads and huge fruits and big vegetables, just, you know, eating them up and still hungry, not understanding what was going on hormonally, biochemically, what was going on in my brain, in my body that was making me so hungry. Also, looking back when I was struggling with my weight when I was a teenager, I would manage that by smoking cigarettes, drinking Tab or Diet Coke, and taking Dexatrim. And I really wanted to understand, I know that there was something going on in my brain that was being affected by the nicotine, probably the caffeine, and the dexatrim that was allowing me to manage my hunger and avoid food. And of course, dexatrim's not on the market anymore. When I got ready to get pregnant, I stopped smoking, this just wanting to be healthy beyond myself. And at that point, the overeating got out of control. But here's what I know, is that when I do a carnivore approach, when I eliminate plants and when I eliminate traditional cardio, my appetite totally modifies. One of the things that I discovered is that POMC appears to have the same kind of effect as fenfluramine. Now, of course, fenfluramine damaged heart valves, so that got pulled off the market. But what raises POMC and what can cause POMC to rise, because the rise in POMC lowers appetite. It has an appetite suppressing effect. And what does that? I found out that one thing that raises POMC is exercise at self-selected intensity. And so my next video, I'm going to dig in deeper to, because it's very technical. I'm going to dig in deeper to the effect of POMC and why is it that self-selected exercise, instead of what I considered, my biggest problem when I was a child is that as I got heavy, I was put on a diet and on the swim team, and I was essentially, let's just face it, I was essentially coerced and forced into doing the kind of cardio that I didn't want to do. It was extremely uncomfortable. I was bad at it. It really hurt and it made me miserable. So exercise is a lot like food. The right kind can make you healthy and happy, and the wrong kind can make you fat and miserable. So I'm looking at POMC in my next video to see what is going on and why it reduces appetite in the same way as fenfluramine. Thank you for joining me here in the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. I hope you will like, subscribe, and share, especially if you know somebody who is trying to overcome obesity for good, especially after 40 or 50 or beyond. Take care, everybody. Make it a wonderful day.